Welcome to another edition of Spark the Conversation. This is your host, Mark, the Spark, and we're going to get into today's news. So the first topic that I wanted to get into today is this news that really shocked the stock market about the Deepseek AI that supposedly has come out and blown everybody out of the water as far in the AI industry. And the claim is that this Chinese company, which of course every company in China is owned by and controlled by the Chinese government, and the Chinese government locks down the information that comes out of China pretty strongly. So the claim is that Deepseek has created an AI using cheaper, older model chips that use a lot less power and is almost as good of a quality as some of the other AI that are out there right now using the expensive NVIDIA chips. And this has created a fear of them in the market and caused some of the chip stocks, especially NVIDIA, who has supplied a lot of the chips that are being used, the top of the line chips that are being used for these AI projects, and has caused its stocks to crater. Okay, it's taken a big hit. And I want to be the first one to come out and call BS on this one. I am going to say, well, I wouldn't be the first one because I'm going to show you some clips of other people saying it, but I didn't know these clips existed before I was making this call, to be honest. But I just want to show some other people, credible people, are backing up what I'm saying, that out of China, there are a lot of things that are told that are not true. Okay? So, first of all, my first argument is that they probably stole NVIDIA chips. There's no evidence that I've seen or heard that these are actually using chips, cheaper, older chips, using less power. And I mean, you can get access to this app, but the app is stealing your data too. We'll get into that in a little bit. But you can use this app to try to see the quality of the output this AI is doing, and some people have done it and said that it's to the same level that other AI like OpenAI and some others are putting out, Gemini and such. They're saying that the quality is there or almost there. But with China's history of stealing other people's information, stealing others' tech, stealing other people's and countries' engineering information, since China has access to everything that passes through their country, it is really not that difficult to believe that they could have access to a lot of this information and tech. Above and beyond that, I mean, it wouldn't take you very long to find a spoof of almost any tech that comes out of China. Just go on Amazon or eBay right now and search for some kind of tech that you're looking for that is more expensive, and you'll probably find a knockoff coming out of China that's looks very similar to the real thing, the real expensive brand name item. So it wouldn't be really surprising to have this happen. But not that too many people are calling this out as being fake or stolen. And I'm going to be the first one to say, NVIDIA, don't take my stock tip as information or any reason to go out and buy NVIDIA. But I would say that NVIDIA is going to bounce back. I would best bet that within days, weeks, or months, there's going to be information coming out saying that this is all maybe not fake, but like there's something where China isn't on the level about all the things that have come out so far. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. I don't have the evidence or the wherewithal to prove any of that. That's just my personal belief based on the past of what's come out of China. But, just stay alert for that kind of stuff because it would not be surprising at all. Or the theft of those chips. And they're really using NVIDIA chips, and they just stole them from somewhere, and and that report, I also have a clip that kind of supports that. But don't get too worried about what's going on in the world of AI right now. But it does kind of point to the importance of Trump pushing the funding of this AI program that he's pushing now to try to get us, ahead of the curve in AI production. So I think that's key. It kind of just pushes the agenda a little bit faster. It just goes to show that President Trump is the leading voice on staying ahead of other countries. He is, any successful businessman has the ability to kind of sense the future in their industry. And President Trump has shown that he has the ability to see the future, to predict the next thing on the scene in business and culture, and that is key in having a good president, a good leader, if we want to be the strongest, most powerful country in the world. So here's a clip. The first clip is it's Kevin O'Leary, who we've shown, he's been talking about social media, but now he's going to be talking about this Deepseek AI and his opinion on what's happening with it.
In a sense, the U.S. is already at war with China, and Deepseek is really on the front line of it.
Well, let's just take the premise that they built it with an old computer with $6 million. I call BS on that. What they did is they ripped off 50 or 60,000 chips from NVIDIA in the black market somewhere. And basically, this is a state-sponsored enterprise, and they've done something very smart. Listen, I'm going to give them credit. They've basically built a free app for you that you can download, and then it scrapes all your emails. So if you're the supreme leader and you think that TikTok's going to go dark and you're losing your number one access to Americans' information, why not just leak out something like this?
It's like a Trojan horse.
And they've done this with other apps as well. While we're going through this debate over the next 68 days as to the fate of TikTok, they've got Lemonade, which is owned by ByteDance. They've got another one called Mao's Little Red Book. I think you would do this if you want to have other lifeboats as you think your main TikTok is sinking.
Right.
But there's a much bigger issue here. If you don't think we're in an economic war with China, you would be wrong. If you don't think we're in a race on technology, you would be wrong. If you don't think we're competing to become the world's largest economy, that's what they're trying to do. Do you think, Aaron, they would allow us to create an app in China where the American server's sitting here, the Chinese downloaded, and we scrape their emails? There's not a chance in hell they would let us do that. So why are we letting them do that here?
The Chinese labs, they have more H100s than people think.
And these are the highest powered NVIDIA chips that they were not supposed to have.
Yes. My understanding is that Deepseek has about 50,000 H100s, which they can't talk about, obviously, because it is against the export controls that the United States has put in place. And I think it is true that, I think they have more chips than other people expect, but also on a go-forward basis, they are going to be limited by the chip controls and the export controls that we have in place.
And our next news story that I wanted to cover is the fact that the Trump administration put a temporary hold on federal payments for grants and other programs. And this is a big, made a big deal out of this. The media especially is making a big deal out of this because they want to spread, of course, fear and confusion, and Democrats are doing the same thing. They're trying to say that Medicare is going to be affected, that welfare is going to be affected, a lot of public programs, payments to individuals who are, in some of these disaster zones, they say are going to be affected as well. And there was actually a website that went down for one of the Medicare programs, and this has been determined to be another one of those malicious compliance type deals. So there's a ton of people within the Trump administration still, well, they're not really within the Trump administration, but they're in the federal government. They're in positions of control and power, and they haven't all been weeded out yet. A lot of these people are trying to keep their head down so that they can subvert a lot of Trump's actions throughout his tenure. But somebody took this executive order to pause some of these payments and said, oh, we're going to shut down this website because that's, within this guidance and it'll make people freak out. So This is going on throughout. We talked about what happened with the military, saying they're not going to talk about Tuskegee Airmen and other issues that were, Pete Hegseth said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. And Trump and Carolyn Levitt, his media personnel, she said that this is not going to happen. This is not what the intent is. Any payment that goes to an individual, any of these programs, any federal program that gives payments and supports individuals is not going to be affected by this. In fact, even things that were already contracts that were already in motion where payments were going out would not be affected by this too. It was stated very clearly. Now, a federal judge has come out and blocked the pause. So basically saying that it must continue. And so there was widespread confusion. Now Trump administration has backed off of this plan to suspend these payments. Basically, the plan was, and this has been done through numerous administrations previously, but the plan was to put a pause on payments so that they could get a handle on where all this money was going. And you're going to hear some of these plans that were stopped through DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, and some other federal agencies that have been put in place tasked to see where some of this erroneous spending is going. And I've got a clip here of Carolyn Levitt explaining that all of those things that I just talked about, but especially the craziness of where some of this money is going. So here's that.
Last 4 years, we've seen the Biden administration spend money like drunken sailors. It's a big reason we've had an inflation crisis in this country, and it's incumbent upon this administration to make sure, again, that every penny is being accounted for honestly.
Why impose this pause with so little notice? Why not give organizations more time to plan for the fact that they are about to lose, in some cases, really crucial federal funding, at least for a period of time?
There was notice. It was the executive order that the president signed. There's also a freeze on hiring, as you know, a regulatory freeze, and there's also a freeze on foreign aid. And this is, again, incredibly important to ensure that this administration is taking into consideration how hard the American people are working. And their tax dollars actually matter to this administration. Just during this pause, DOGE and OMB have actually found that there was $37 million that was about to go out the door to the World Health Organization, which is an organization, as you all know, that President Trump, with the swipe of his pen in that executive order, is no longer wants the United States to be a part of. So that wouldn't be in line with the president's agenda. DOGE and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars.
And so this doesn't affect Meals on Wheels or Head Start or disaster aid?
Again, it does not affect individual assistance that's going to Americans.
So those were a couple big important things that were stopped by the Trump executive order. Was money going to the World Health Organization, which we do not want. We do not support the World Health Organization. Trump's already made that clear and made an executive order that we're withdrawing from that organization. $37 million and $50 million that was going to go towards condoms in Gaza. Now, I don't care what kind of humanitarian aid you think that they need in Gaza. Somebody's going to have to explain to me what $50 million of condoms is going to do to help them move back into their rubbled houses and destroyed neighborhoods and the lack of food and supplies because the Hamas steal it from them. Somebody's going to have to explain where all that comes from or what how that helps them. Now, the truth is, it sounds like some of these products, these condoms, they've actually determined how to turn them into military apparatus where they fill them up with helium and attach some kind of explosive to them and use it to terrorize Israel and other enemies. So this is crazy. And the fact that Democrats are out there and the lamestream media is out there trying to spread the lies and the hypocrisy about what this executive order actually does is heinous. It's abhorrent and it's sickening. So I'm calling them out for that. Just like Carolyn Levitt has said we need to call out the lamestream media for this, these terrible fallacies that they're spreading. I'm going to do that as well. So while on the topic of the abhorrent lamestream media that lies and spreads disinformation, it's also important to point to the fact that they hate you, and the real feelings that they have for you are really not hidden that deeply. We have Stephen Miller, who is the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, and he was on with Jake Tapper on CNN today, and it's funny to see that the Trump administration has really hired the best people to do some of these jobs. And this guy on going on CNN just absolutely slammed Jake Tapper. I mean, somebody called him a body bag for him, because it is just so bad. And it's really, really funny to see. The first clip, he's talking about illegal immigrants, and Jake Tapper's talking about who, and we talked about this before, who is going to pick the crops? Who's going to do all these menial jobs that are needed and keep the prices of items in the store down, and all these other things? And Stephen Miller calls him out in a couple different ways, which you're going to see. One way he calls him out is saying that you're supporting not only illegal hiring of people for lower wages, but you're also, by saying that this is a necessity, have these people do these jobs, you're also saying that we should be taking advantage of people who are in a position where they can't get basically legal documentation, they can't get jobs that would pay more because they have that. So we're taking advantage of their position, and we should be taking advantage of their position so that we can have cheaper goods. And the other way he calls them out is by saying that you're lying about the fact that all these illegals are actually working on farms, because he points out the fact that most of the illegal immigrants that they're picking up right now, besides the fact that they're focusing on the criminals, the worst of the worst, right? This is what they're focusing on right now, the dangerous criminals that are in our country illegally. Besides that fact, he points out that most of the people they're picking up right now are on the streets of the city. They're in the major cities, especially sanctuary cities. So he points this out, and of course Jake Tapper's trying to cut him off because he knows he's about to get body slammed. But Stephen Miller says, we're not going to farms. These people are not farmers. These are in your cities. And it's absolutely great. Here's that clip. Enjoy this one.
Because one of the reasons that President Trump got elected, according to President Trump in an interview, I think it was with Kristen Welker of NBC, was because of grocery prices. Not the only reason, but a reason: high prices, inflation, especially at the grocery. The Department of Agriculture says that between 2020 and 2022, 42% of crop workers were undocumented immigrants. And in many cases, as you know, these migrants do jobs many Americans do not want to do. So how does President Trump make sure that the effort to deport people who are not in this country legally doesn't end up hurting Americans who want safe borders, absolutely, but also don't want to see even more higher prices in groceries?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's not your position, Jake. You're just asking the question, that we should supply America's food with exploitative illegal alien labor. I obviously don't think that's what you're implying. Only 1% of alien workers in the entire country work in agriculture. The top destination for illegal aliens are large cities like New York, like Los Angeles, and small industrial towns, of course, all across the heartland, as we've seen with the Biden flights. Mm-hmm. None of those illegal aliens are doing farm work. Those 30,000 illegal aliens that Joe Biden dumped into
Yeah,
Springfield.
I'm talking about the ones that
no,
are.
No, but I'm explaining this. It's important to understand.
No, you're kind of changing the subject. I mean, I'm talking about the ones.
I will give me 30 minutes. I'll go as deep as you want on this.
We don't have
you
30
and your
minutes.
audience.
I don't have I'm talking about the ones that work in the agriculture industry.
I'm
you
explaining
can come back
to you
and we
your
can talk
audience.
about the ones in the cities. I swear.
I'll do the whole answer. The illegal aliens that Joe Biden brought into our country are not full stop doing farm work. They are not. The illegal aliens he brought in from Venezuela, from Haiti, from Nicaragua, they are not doing farm work. They are in our cities collecting welfare. As for the farmers, there is a guest worker program that President Trump supports. Over time as well, we will transition into automation, so we'll never have to have this conversation ever again. But there's no universe in which this nation is going to allow the previous president to flood our nation with millions and millions of illegal aliens who just get to stay here. And we are especially not going to allow a subset of those illegal aliens to rape and murder our citizens. So we are going to unapologetically enforce our immigration laws, and as I'm sure you will celebrate, we are going to unleash the power and might of the U.S. government to eradicate the presence of transnational threats on our soil.
So our next clip is from Stephen Miller again, still on Jake Tapper's show on CNN. And it's funny because he slams them again. This is in a couple different ways. Now he's talking about the freeze, the federal government payment freeze, and Jake Tapper's trying to nail him down, saying that this is going to affect federal employees. And Stephen Miller makes a couple good points here, but it's so funny when he catches him talking about. So Stephen Miller is trying to make the point that most of the federal workforce voted for Kamala Harris, and Jake Tapper's trying to deny that premise and saying that that's not provable. Stephen Miller easily pulls out the stat that they voted for Kamala Harris in that percentage, and that obviously makes him left wing and against most of the actions that Trump is trying to make. And he's trying to point out that they're sabotaging, or that at least they have the capability of sabotaging the actions the Trump administration is trying to make. Now, Jake Tapper says, now you're trying to demonize a segment of the population, and Stephen Miller calls him out and say, what are you trying to say about the people who supported Kamala Harris? And it's pretty funny to see how he just tries to sidestep and move on from the issue, and eventually Stephen Miller does, because he doesn't want to harp on him too bad. He kind of feels bad for body slamming him so many times in one segment. And I look forward to this back and forth throughout the administration, because Jake Tapper's got his work cut out for him. He's got good competition now. And so they move on talking about more the federal government freeze and how it's going to affect the workforce. And they've all actually offered a buyout. So they're going to say anybody who doesn't want to return to the office, because Trump said all federal employees need to now return back to the office, because most of them are sitting at home doing nothing or not accomplishing what they can anyways. And I think we can realize this is true because so many companies have come back to the workforce, or brought them back to the office as well. And during COVID, when people were brought or forced to stay home, I thought, wow, we're going to have a crisis of commercial real estate once COVID is over, and because people are not going to go back. Companies have found another way that's way cheaper, because commercial real estate is not cheap. It's very expensive to rent. And I said, wow, think of the money that companies will save by allowing people to stay home. But ultimately it's going to create a crisis. Sorry about that buzzing. I'm working on getting that fixed. But it's going to create a crisis of commercial real estate that's available and not being used and not being paid for. And what's going to happen to all these buildings? Well, that has continued to an extent, but a large majority of business operations has been returning to the office, which tells you, because the commercial world, which is different than the government world, is always trying to hone in on efficiency, because they are trying to make a business. They're trying to make money. And most businesses, contrary to what the left will tell you, is making money on the margins. So every penny counts. So if they thought they could save money overall by keeping people home, even with a little less efficiency and work output, they would do that. The fact that companies en masse are bringing people back into the workforce tells me that that was not the case, that they're losing efficiency time over itself. I mean, if, like I said, it can't be close. Now, obviously, some companies need their people in the office to do work, especially work related to manufacturing. But it's clear to me that the businesses have found the most efficient method of getting work done is by doing it in the office. And so Trump is honing in on that as well and bringing people back in. And they've said it's going to save them billions of dollars if the expected percentage of people take them up on this this offer to stay home, or not stay home, but to give it, leave their jobs in order to not have to come to the office. So here's that clip.
And I want to really drill down on this, Jake, because it's so important. There's 2 million employees in the federal government. Overwhelmingly, the career federal service in this country is far left wing. I don't
know that to be a fact.
Well, I'll give you a great example. We looked at USAID as an example.
That's
98% of the workforce either donated to Kamala Harris or another left-wing candidate, just as an example.
Okay, but let me just an entire workforce as having a...
Whoa. Did you just say that saying someone voted for Kamala Harris is demonizing them?
No,
so according
your suggestion is that there's a bias.
No, but you used the word demonizing. You just said that I'm demonizing somebody by saying they voted for Kamala Harris.
Let's get back on track.
But I am on track.
Okay.
Let me stay on track. What I'm saying to you is this. There are 2 million employees in the federal government.
Right.
They're overwhelmingly left of center. The American people, I got to finish the sentence.
Okay.
I got to finish the sentence. The American people voted for dramatic change implemented by Donald Trump. So it is essential for him to get control of government, to establish a whole of government process for Donald Trump's political appointees to review discretionary grants of spending for pet projects that are not directed by Congress. In other words, these are pots of money where Congress hasn't said how to spend it or where to spend it. This might be something like saying, I want to build a $500 million fountain in the courtyard of the Department of Commerce.
So again, just like Carolyn Levitt pointed out earlier, he's pointing out again that these things that are being paused are things that have been kind of like, the money has been set aside for a certain project or a certain maybe topic, but not, the decision hasn't been made, or contracts haven't been signed, or agreements haven't been made on spending the money on a specific thing. And so they're holding back that money, this kind of discretionary income, but things that not money that has not been set aside or directed towards a certain project. They are taking that and holding that money only, not towards things that have already been established, not towards individual payments for people who are expecting assistance of any kind or have been receiving assistance in the past. So, it's just, again, calling out the media for their lies and fear-mongering. And our last thing that I want to cover today is RFK was sitting in front of the Senate today. He's in front of the Finance Committee, which I'm not really sure how the Director of Health and Human Services has anything to do with finance, but maybe there's no other department that it falls under, or any other committee that it would fall under. But regardless, he sits in front of the committee today. This is day one. They're expecting this to be a 2-day hearing. It was fairly uneventful, but I just want to show a couple clips, some from his opening statement, some from a reply that he made to a question, and then also I wanted to share his cousin, Carolyn Kennedy's statement about him. The Kennedys have been really split on their support for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And some of it's, I think it's political for sure. I mean, the Kennedys have been a pretty far-leaning family in general. They've got a lot of skeletons in their closet. Granted, they're quite a large family, and any family that's this big and that's been in public view for so long is going to have some things to hide. I think that's pretty obvious. So regardless, we're going to listen to his opening statement, and we'll go from there.
Problems in this country that we must face honestly. And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to get on my knees and pray to God that he would put me in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic and to help America's children. That's why I'm so grateful to President Trump for the opportunity to sit before you today and seek your support and partnership in this endeavor.
So obviously that was just part of his opening statement. But regardless of what you think of Robert F. Kennedy, and I have my various opinions, I think that some of the statements he's made in the past have been a little bit unusual, to say the least. I definitely don't agree with a lot of his political stance. He is still a left-leaning person. A lot of his views are Democrat and way further left than I would ever go. However, he is willing to ask the questions. And you can see in this clip, and you'll see it in the next one too, that really he's not coming out to make declarative statements on vaccines or medical treatments or medical processes that that have been established. What he's doing is asking the questions. He's asking the questions that we're not allowed to ask. It's just like during COVID when we weren't allowed to ask about vaccines and masks, even though they had no evidence that they worked. Their best evidence of masks working to prevent the spread of COVID was the stupid pee your pants meme that was going around saying, if you pee on your pants and wearing pants, the pants doesn't go all over everybody else, but if you're not wearing pants, it does. And which was like the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Anybody could understand, a child could understand the difference between a virus and peeing your pants. I mean, it was just asinine. But that was what the kind of stuff that we had to deal with in COVID. And COVID, I guess you could say, had a pro-con result, where the cons were, a lot of these regulations that got shoved down our throats. There was millions of people that were forced to take a vaccine. But the pros are that we saw that we should not be trusting these people, number one. Number two, that there's a lot of things that we believed about the medical community that were not proven, but we just assumed that they did their due diligence so that we could trust them. And three is we started to ask the questions that nobody ever asked. I mean, how many vaccines do we give a newborn child right now? And nobody is allowed to ask the question. In fact, before we never thought to ask the question if it was safe or not. If I had a child right now, I'd certainly be asking a lot more questions and have a lot more reservations than I did when I had my child 13 years ago. And I don't blame parents for having concerns about that. In fact, I would be concerned if they didn't have concerns about anything in the medical industry right now, especially regarding children. I mean, when they can't tell you a boy and girl is different, and where they're trying to coerce you into medically mutilating your child because, a child feels like they're a different gender, especially when they're being coerced into that by their teachers and by social media. How would you trust them for any kind of basic service? I would really seriously take your family doctor and interrogate them. Like it's an interview, and it should be a job interview. You should be interviewing your child's doctor just like your own doctor, so that your beliefs line up with their beliefs, because they are just projecting what they're being told to project. When this COVID vaccine came out, and I know I'm going off track, but this is important. When this COVID vaccine came out, and they said, if you don't trust us, ask your doctor. I thought that was the craziest thing ever, because I know that my doctor didn't do the research to see if the vaccine works or not. He may have read a study, unlikely, because they're busy doing 15-minute appointments with patients. He may have read a study, but I don't even trust the study. Who did the study? Did my doctor personally measure the effectiveness of the COVID vaccine? Did my doctor personally investigate the effectiveness of a flu vaccine that they're recommending? No. In fact, a lot of these we've found out now that some of these polio vaccines that RFK has been talking about have had very little research done into them. And that's scary. And these are the kind of questions that we need to ask. These are the kinds of questions that Robert F. Kennedy is willing to ask. And thank goodness that he is, because somebody needs to. Here's a clip, another clip of him talking about some of those things that I just addressed.
Democrats and Republicans, there's no issue that should unite us more than this chronic health epidemic. There's no such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. These are our kids. 66% of them are damaged. I know what a healthy kid looks like because I had so many of them in my family. I didn't know anybody with a food allergy growing up, peanut allergy. Why do 5 of my kids have allergies? Why are we seeing these explosions in diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, neurological diseases, depression, all of these things that are related to toxics in the environment? Why can't we just agree with each other to put differences about so many issues, intractable issues aside, and say, we're going to end this? I don't think anybody is going to be able to do this like I have because of my peculiar experience, because I've litigated against these agencies. When you litigate against them, you get a PhD in corporate capture and how to unravel it. I've written 6 books about these agencies. I know a lot about them and I know how to fix it. And there's nobody who will fix it the way that I do because I'm not scared of vested interests. I don't care. I'm not here because I want a position or a job. I have a very good life and a happy family. This is something I don't need. I want to do this because we're going to fix it. And the other thing is we are attracting now a caliber of people to HHS like never before in history. And they're entrepreneurs, they're disruptors, they're innovators of immense talent that are walking away, many of them from growing concerns. They're not coming there for position. They're coming there because they want to save our country. And they're from across the political spectrum. And all these Democrats are opposed to me for partisan issues. They used to be my friends. Agreed with me on all the environmental issues that I've been working on for my whole career. Now they're against me because anything that President Trump does, any decision he makes, has to be lampooned, derided, discredited, marginalized, vilified.
And again, he's making a lot of good points there. Again, like I said, he's questioning what needs to be questioned. And he's making the points about these people. You know, he points out the hypocrisy of the left. And again, I always say the hypocrisy of the left. And then I double take because I always say you can't be hypocritical if you don't have moral standards and values. They don't have a standard truth. So you can't be a hypocrite because that would require you to go against your truth. They have no truth. They have no standard. They have no morals or values. It's a moving metric constantly. So you can't be a hypocrite if you have that moving target. But regardless, he's talking about the fact that they used to be his friends. And this is the other point of the left is you better watch out because, you know, as soon as you cross them, they'll turn on you. And actually, that brings me to this quote. Every time I think about the left and how they move their targets all the time and they don't have morals and standards, and that when you, like Elon Musk is a great example too, where he says, I didn't leave the left left me. There's a quote, and this is from A Man for All Seasons, where a scene with William Roper and Sir Thomas More, and they're talking about the devil. And this is very important. He says, William Roper says, so now you give the devil the benefit of the law? He's saying this to Sir Thomas More, who's the judge. Sir Thomas More says, yes. What would you do? Cut a great road through the law to get after the devil? So basically saying, you know, get rid of all laws to go after the devil. And William Roper says, yes, I'd cut down every law in England to do that. Dangerous. Sir Thomas More says, oh, and when the last law was down and the devil turned round on you, where would you hide, Roper? The laws being flat. This country is planted thick with laws from coast to coast, man's laws, not God's. And if you cut them down, you're just a man, and you're just the man to do it. Do you really think you could stand upright in the winds that would blow then? Yes, I'd give the devil benefit of the law for my own safety's sake. And what he's saying there is the fact that if you're going to get rid of all the laws in order to go after the devil, like they did Donald Trump, and like they always do, the left is always willing to throw out rules and standards to get their way, like they did with the filibuster for federal judges. They're willing to throw the law to the wind, and then as soon as they lose power, they're afraid and they try to protect themselves and call out the conservatives, the right, for using the new laws and the new guidelines that have been thrown out the window or weakened or changed to their advantage. Now they want to say, I can't believe you're doing that. Like, for example, when they told Donald Trump, they used fear tactics to say he was going to pardon himself and his family before he left office in 2020. And then Biden did it. That is the point. And now when they open that can of worms for Trump to do that in 2028, which I don't think that he'll have to, but, he was targeted this time. So, they're going to say, I can't believe he's doing that. He must be guilty of something. Well, you opened up that can of worms. You're the one who changed the law. And the same is true with Robert F. Kennedy has noticed that they used to be his friends. They used to stand by him. He used to agree with them. But now he's seen the light. He's seen their truth, that they're willing to get rid of any standard. They're willing to throw him to the wolves because now he's stepped out of line. It's very, very telling. Very telling of the left, indeed. This last clip is about, and the last point that I wanted to make was when he talks about President Trump, and he says, anything he does, you guys are against. You don't even know what you're against. You won't even let me ask the questions. You just know that now that I'm associated with Donald Trump, it must be evil. Again, very telling. The last clip is the cousin of RFK, Carolyn Kennedy, who has her own skeletons in her closet. She has sent in a video affidavit to the Senate, and I'm only going to play a couple minutes of it because it's long. But I think it's important to see, again, how the left will turn on their own family even. And it's funny because part of her speech says how they always support each other, and then she goes and basically attacks him, vicious attacks. It's funny because RFK's ex-wife is behind him in the crowd too, supporting his advancement in this committee, in this position. But watch just how willing the left is to eat their own in this video.
We are a close generation of 28 cousins who have been through a lot together. We know how hard it's been, and we are always there for each other. But now that Bobby has been nominated by President Trump to be Secretary of Health and Human Services, a position that would put him in charge of the health of the American people, I feel an obligation to speak out. Overseeing the FDA, the NIH, the CDC, and Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, agencies that are charged with protecting the most vulnerable among us, is an enormous responsibility and one that Bobby is unqualified to fill. He lacks any relevant government, financial, management, or medical experience. His views on vaccines are dangerous and willfully misinformed. These facts alone should be disqualifying. But he has personal qualities related to this job, which for me pose even greater concern. I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator. He's always been charismatic, able to attract others through the strength of his personality, his willingness to take risks and break the rules. I watch his younger brothers and cousins follow him down the path of drug addiction. His basement, his garage, his dorm room were always the center of the action, where drugs were available, and he enjoyed showing off how he put baby chickens and mice in a blender to feed to his hawks. It was often a perverse scene of despair and violence. That was a long time ago, and people can change. Through his own strength and the many second chances he was given by people who felt sorry for the boy who lost his father, Bobby was able to pull himself out of illness and disease. I admire the discipline that took and the continuing commitment it requires. But siblings and cousins who Bobby encouraged down the path of substance abuse suffered addiction, illness, and death, while Bobby has gone on to misrepresent, lie, and cheat his way through life. Today, while he may encourage a younger generation to attend AA meetings, Bobby is addicted to attention and power. Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs. Even before he fills this job, his constant denigration of our healthcare system and the conspiratorial half-truths he's told about vaccines, including in connection with Samoa's deadly 2019 outbreak of measles, have cost lives. And now we know that Bobby's crusade against vaccination has benefited him in other ways too. His ethics report makes clear that he will keep his financial stake in a lawsuit against an HPV vaccine.
So you could see she's targeting him in a lot of different areas and from a lot of different angles. After saying that they always stood by each other and supported each other, she comes out and attacks him as a predator without any kind of factual information to back it up, except that he had birds, which he fed meat. Well, I mean, that's what you feed birds, especially birds of prey, if that's even true. Who knows? She doesn't back up any of this stuff. And then makes the claim that that he's a hypocrite because he vaccinated his kids. Well, guess what? I vaccinated my kid too. There's a lot of parents out there that have vaccinated their kids and had regrets. Look how many people out there had the COVID vaccine, because some of them were coerced, some were convinced, some were scared, thought they needed it. But look how many of them are regretting it. And if somebody asked them, should I get it? Even though they got it themselves, that person would say no. Sometimes the best people to share wisdom are those who made the mistakes. And I'm sure that RFK Jr has realized the mistake that he made for his kids. And he brings out the evidence too, when he says, why do my kids have so many allergies? Kids my age, when we were kids, we didn't have those allergies. He's asking the question. He's not saying don't vaccinate your kids. Maybe he said similar things in the past. But I think the bigger point that he's always made is, don't just do it because somebody told you to do it. Do it because you think it's the right thing. It's the best thing for your children. Do your research. Don't just blindly follow. And he understands that the research isn't all there. And that's why he's the perfect person for this job, because he realizes that the research isn't there. The information that parents need to make a good decision is not there. And it's important that somebody like this, and that's why, the whole Trump administration, they have brought forth transparency. That's why that's my word to describe this administration, is transparent, because they're all asking the questions that nobody's asked. They're willing to share the information that nobody has shared. They're willing to give the power back to the people where it belongs. And so I say, nominate this man, continue down this path of transparency, and make America great again. Thanks for watching this episode. I'd invite you to subscribe, follow, leave a comment, and send your friends this way as well. Now go out and do something, volunteer for something meaningful, and spark the conversation.